Buckle up. You've just hit the play button on The Notice, a podcast from Otava with hosts TJ Houske and Melissa Lock. Expect to laugh, nod vigorously, and maybe even fist pump as we dive deep into the tech that powers your business, leadership that uplifts, and how culture can make your company the kind of place where everyone wants to clock in. So if you're ready for insights that stick and laughs that last, you've got a seat at our table. Welcome to The Notice, where tech gets personal and growth is a group project. Let's get started.
All right. Welcome to another episode of The Notice, episode 10 of season 2. I can't believe it.
Cruising through.
We're
cruising through.
So today we're going to talk about habits of high-performing employees. So it goes on beyond, just doing your job and what that looks like and how to make an impact. We also have Telarus, and so he's going to join us later in the episode and talk about their program and their partnership.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great that we're getting more people involved in different areas of our business and our partnerships, our customers. That's what you and I said when we started this crazy thing is we like the opportunity to showcase the people, whether it's our employees or our partners, because that's what this is about. So I'm excited to, spend time with them. So it'll be fun. All right, Mo, so it's our favorite time, shout outs, and this one's near and dear to hearts. So really excited that we get to talk about this. And so for the month of June, we want to celebrate collectively all those that participated in A Day to Be Great. And for those that are unaware, A Day to Be Great really is a service effort in recognition of Melissa's son, Tabor, who is amazing. Tabor left us a year ago, June, in an unexpected and unfortunate car accident. But his light is beyond measure and it carries on. And the stories that you have shared and have experienced in the last year have been incredible. And to see that parlay into now an effort focused every year in June because he loved to serve has been awesome. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that came to be and what you witnessed in the month of June as a result?
Sure. Yeah. Tabor had a heart for serving others, and especially those who were in need of food or shelter, and that could be human or animal. And so we thought as a way to honor his memory and his big heart, we would promote A Day to Be Great and for those to just encourage that type of activity. And we had an event where we had folks come to our house and we fed them and they brought food donations, and we collected over 200 pounds of food for our local food pantry. We had another individual take flowers to a nursing facility, a nursing home, and make some smiles in that way. And we've had others donate to dog rescues. And then there was another activity in Kansas where we're originally from where they collected food and gave to a local food bank. So I'm sure I'm missing some. Assure's had a volunteer day, the parent company of Otava, at a food rescue in South Bend, and as a way to honor Tabor as well, and A Day to Be Great. So it was nice to see his goodness continue.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
So excited that this is the beginning. So really excited. So what a special moment and really cool. So thank you for everybody that participated. It means the world. So thank you very much. All right, so today's topic and what we're really excited to dig into is the habits of high-performing employees. Now, this is an interesting one, and the reason for that is because I'll liken it to fitness, and we'll connect the dots here in a second, okay? So as a coach and a background in this for a long time, I used to have people come to me and say, hey, I want to get healthy, and I want to lose weight. And I always say, okay, great. What are your goals? And we would lay that out. And then what would happen is somebody would say to me, I've been doing it for 2 weeks. How come I'm not seeing results? My answer would always be the same. High performance results to get the outcomes that you want are measured in consistent discipline over time. It didn't take 20 days to achieve, a lack of health, and you're not going to fix it in 20 days, but you can change the mindset overnight, right? And when you get into high performance employees, I tend to think that on average, I do it, Mo, I'm sure you do it, we naturally think a little bit more of ourselves than we probably should. And so we've joked about this, like I don't know how other companies do that, but for the audience, here at Schurz and specifically in Otava, we have really a star ranking mechanism that kind of starts the conversation. So it frames up in a self-assessment process. How do I measure myself? And we lay out specifically what your measurements are, like what you're looking at from a performance perspective. And then you kind of self-rank or self-evaluate. And that the goal of that is to really set yourself up in such a way that when you meet with your leader, you're having a really fulsome conversation transparently, even vulnerably, about where you think you are versus where they see you are. And that, Brene Brown would say that rumble with vulnerability, right, creates a really good conversation to put together the right plan to be a high performer or to develop at a higher level. Now, what we've seen historically, and we've all done it, is by default, if 5 stars are available and we're ranking ourselves, we rank ourselves as 5 stars. We go, I'm a high performer, right? And the truth is, we're not. Every one of us has areas of opportunity or blind spots where we overexcel in some and we underperform in others. And it's hard to self-analyze, right? And so what we're going to talk about here in this section is what's measurable, right? Because without being able to measure it, you naturally are going to, with words, say, I'm going to excuse away these things. And that's just not how this works. You want to get great outcomes and you want to be able to duplicate this and carry it forward. So framing that up a little bit, Mo, you've been coaching people and working in this area for your whole career. And you and I have talked about this several times about like, hey, we got to really rank. What is table stakes? You show up, you do your job. We expect you to do that. You get a paycheck, right? Yes. Versus what is high performance? So why don't you talk a little bit about this? Because you've had this conversation more than anybody I know.
I have. And the rating scale does throw people off because, when you go to school, you have A, B, C, D, or A, B, C, D, F, right? And in that middle, if you have a star, 5 stars, your mind naturally goes A to F, right? Right. And so if you have a middle one, you're getting a C and you're just average and you're not quite performing as well as you think you are because of that rating. But our scale where it just meets expectations is that middle until you can be below or above expectations. So what does meeting expectations look like? It is doing your job. Your daily requirement. You are meeting the requirements of your job. And some high performers typically take that a step further. And those are the ones that would generally see, a 4 or a 5 here or there. Not every area. None of us are usually performing that way in every area. But, you're taking charge. You see something that needs to be done and you do it. You volunteer to lead something. You are just proactive and have some initiative about you that you just do offer a little bit more than just the minimum requirements of your job. And that would elevate you to being a high performer. The way you work with your team, are you positive? I know me personally, I do not appreciate working with those who complain all the time or only choose to see the negative in situations, but those who see the positive and see, how to overcome things. And even if they do see problems, they offer solutions. Those are some of the just bare minimum things that high performers are known for and what makes them stand out from the rest of the team.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we were reading, so it's our pre-read coming into today's recording. Chris Donnelly had put a post out on LinkedIn. And so we were reading through that, and I've got it up on my other screen, so I'll read. But he shared some great examples of his top 12 things to measure high performance, including employees that celebrate their colleagues and look for ways to prop them up and put them in a position that they get the credit, right? An openness to new ideas and constantly reevaluating what's working, not what's not. Like what's working, why is it working, and how can we, further enhance that? Upskilling themselves and investing in themselves to constantly improve, whether it's through personal growth, professional development, specific skill sets, and the like. Never gossiping about other people, or having, we talked about this before, a meeting within the meeting, meaning after the meeting is over, they're actually going to go back and talk about what they really wanted to say, but didn't have the courage or the professionalism
That's right.
to say in the actual meeting, right? And so high performance, I really think, can be more summed up into the elements of your character that you exude
Yes.
as an employee. And if I could say this boldly and respectfully intended, it's really having an ownership mindset and an employee model. And be careful with that. What I mean by that is nobody that owns a company has an expectation that with you not having equity in that business, that there's an expectation that you should behave as if you own the business. That's not reasonable, and nobody expects that. But having an ownership mindset, it's similar to you rent a home, but you treat it with good stewardship as if you owned it, right? There's a part of you that understands leave things better than you found it, whether that's people, whether that's circumstances and situations, right? That's just a quality that high performers exude. And so they take a sense of ownership in a situation that says, what can I do to make a difference with what I've got and what I know, right? As opposed to, well, I can't do this. Like somebody else is going to do it, or it's not my job, or, if I had more money or more time. And I think that's really the fundamental break point between minimum and maximum, and starting to step into that space of, rockstar, where people are recognizing there is something different about this employee. And that's where the recognition comes from. That's where the growth and the inspiration, comes from. So I certainly really appreciate high performance, because what it says to me is like, hey, you're like me, like you want to go make a difference and you want to make an impact. And through that, there's really no limit on what you can achieve,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
So tangibly, let's help the audience here, Mo. So we talk a lot about what it represents. How do we cultivate? So as a leader, how do we cultivate high performance? Because maybe an employee says, I want to be a high performer, or I feel like I am. How do we cultivate that to help somebody really capture that tailwind and, accelerate in their career to do that? What advice would we give?
I think it comes with development of an employee, and that's where you win together. So you can develop a high performer because you're pouring into them the development they need to get where they want to go in their career. How do we get you where you want to go? And while you're getting there, what are the things that you can do here? Get the experience that you need, or maybe there's a certification we can help you get, some skills, some cross training, a mentor. That what are those things that we can do and help grow you here? And while you're here, you can perform well to help you get where you want to go. I think that we are growing your career is the way to really enhance the performance level, because there's buy-in and it's not one-sided. And that's really where I think it's valuable. And that's where you get buy-in to what you're doing, even as an organization. They want to be a part of it, of course, too, because you're helping them get where they want to go. So
I love that. That's such a powerful statement that you said, we together, you, me, we are doing this, as opposed to I'm just putting this on you and, sink or swim, right? It's a partnership, and certainly each person has to do their part, but to take ownership collectively and lay out a plan. And I think that would be one piece of wisdom I would give to a leader listening here. And everybody's a leader, but if people are assigned to you in your current role, or you want to get into a leadership role, I fundamentally believe, and we've said this on previous episodes, to help somebody succeed, you have to help them understand what success looks like, right? So how are you going to measure that so that they can measure, yeah, I'm hitting the mark or I'm not hitting the mark? And then what are the touch points along the way that you can course correct if maybe performance isn't aligned with what the expectations were? And a lot of time what I find happens, and I have done this, is you confuse speed with success. And so all of a sudden it's like, we need to get it done fast instead of we need to get it done well, right? And sometimes fast is necessary because deadlines are real, but you can still define success along the way so that you can measure it and help somebody see what the minimum is versus what the maximum is, so they can measure high performance. And when you do that and you create that kind of a systematic feedback loop, you watch people, they can consistently perform at a high level. And that's where the we comes into this thing to help somebody, reach their next level of growth. So,
yeah. And I would encourage individuals, if the we isn't there, then you might have to raise the flag and say, hey, manager, here's what I want to do. Can you help me? Sometimes employees sit back and a manager doesn't necessarily come to them directly, and they're like, they get frustrated, they kind of get disengaged into what they're doing, and they feel like a victim and no one's helping me. Help yourself, take that charge and take that initiative to go find a way to get where you want to go. And your manager just may not have even realized, they're managing a lot of things. They may be half manager, half, hands on a keyboard. And so raise your hand and bring it up and help develop a plan and do it together.
That's such a great point, Mo. Like, I know we've talked about that before, but as an example, I mean, in your career, you've even pre-created written plans of like what you, Melissa, want to achieve, and then brought that to your manager to say, listen, this is what I want to do. And I love that you've said this before, but it'd be great for you to restate it here. Like, you have a responsibility in your career, right? You're not just along for the ride. Right. And if you don't reach out, then you don't get the opportunity to claim victim like that. Like, well, my manager didn't do this. Well, it's your career. Like, you have the opportunity to raise your hand and knock. So you've talk a little bit about that more. I want to peel that back because you've been through that. You've seen what that looks like, and good versus not good. But give a couple examples. That's really helpful.
Well, for me, it's really how I grew my career. I didn't know I was considered a high performer, but if you look at this list, I did a lot of these things. When I was done with the work that I was assigned for the day, I went and asked other people if I could help them with their work, even if it wasn't in my area, because I learned their area. And before I knew it, I knew multiple jobs. And so then I was elevated because I had a greater understanding. And then I took my own education too upon myself to learn because of the different areas of the business. Developing myself in other areas, I became more valuable, and that advanced my career organically. Like it just happened that way. And then when I reached a place where I didn't really know what the next step was, that's when I would go to my manager and say, okay, here's where I am. Here's what I've been doing. How do I get to the next level? And that's where we would together work to figure out what I needed to do. Or if I thought I knew what it was, I at least brought something and said, what do you think about these ideas, this certification or this class or this conference, and that would help me do X, Y, and Z. And I would like to take on that experience here. And that's right. So yeah, you do definitely have to take initiative for yourself too.
And let me this is such a great topic because so many times in seasons, I hear people come and they confuse compensation with performance. And what I mean by that is they don't always directly correlate in the same season. Sometimes you're performing in advance of what's to come. And a lot of times folks are really like, I'll perform when, right? And I think you made a great point. I remember you saying this over a year ago. It has stayed with me, and I will not remember it word for word, but you said something like, what you're being paid for today is from work that you previously did. Like your salary today represents, did I get that right? It represents what you did to get to where you are. Is that, did I catch that right?
Yep.
Yeah. And go ahead. I don't want to take away because it was powerful.
Well, I was just going to add on to that. Your salary today represents what you did, but what you know today, is that going to get you where you want to go? So just always thinking about what's next and how to develop yourself and how to grow and how to do more and be better. Yeah.
That's great. And I want to attach it here in this segment because, we've talked in the past and, from an employee perspective or growing other people, a lot of times, and I get it, it's especially a Western thing where you associate your value and self-worth with your paycheck and your title, right? And high performance is really separate from that, right? High performance is an individual thing that is attached to in whatever role you're in today, regardless of the title and regardless of the size of the compensation package, there is a minimum standard for that particular role, and there is an unknown. And that unknown is really where high performance comes in. And what I try to help coach people to do, and I know that we're saying this here, is it's on you. You're the variable. And so could you take a position of, that's not really my job. Like, I'm not going to get paid to do that. Is anybody even going to notice? You absolutely can. There's a lot of people that take that position on a regular basis. Is it true that just because you start to do those things, all of a sudden you're going to get promoted, get recognized, and get more income? No, it won't. But I can promise that consistently performing like that, with that goal of hunger, of wanting to do more and know more and become more, it will pay dividend long term. It will get recognized. It is the law of reaping and sowing. It will come back to you in a way that you cannot imagine. And to put the finest point on it, I use Mo as a great example of, I don't think a lot of people know, you literally picked up and left your home root system in Kansas and relocated in a way that was life-changing for opportunity to be a high performer, right? Would you be willing to tell a little bit of that story? Because there's somebody listening that's like, I didn't know that. Like, that's me. Like, I took a risk. And I think that's a really powerful story for this section.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So yeah, I was working in Wichita, Kansas, had been working there for almost 20 years, and an opportunity to work at the corporate level came open, and I knew that it would help advance my career long term. And so both my husband and my side of the family are in Kansas, and we moved to South Bend, Indiana, and took that opportunity. And I've been here for 10 years in July this month. Yeah, 10 years. And so I've grown in my role here, advanced in this role, and it has been rewarding, but it was very scary to do, but it was worth it because it's what I needed to grow, to develop, and to continue to advance where I wanted to go long term. And so that really worked out for me. I wouldn't necessarily say everyone needs to move 12 hours away, but
right.
But if the opportunity presents itself, and it's something that works and makes sense in your career path, it's scary, but do it anyway.
That's right. Yeah. It's scary, but do it anyway.
Great
words to close on. So yeah, no, I think I hope folks that you've enjoyed this section, because high performance is something I genuinely believe every person really does aspire to it. And a lot of times there's a quick I give up from people for a lot of reasons. But I think one of the number one reasons is they don't actually understand what that looks like and how to measure that. And maybe if you're a leader, you don't know how to cultivate that within somebody. And so then there's the opportunity that it could be a profession or it can be a job. They're not the same thing. And when you really embrace that, I have an opportunity to make a mark on my professional journey, and really embrace that ownership mindset and be the high performer to that, I promise you'll have highs and lows through it. But it is a very different outcome instead of, really a just over broke mindset, right? Through the process of collecting a check. And it's not a very fun way to go through the career journey in it. So hopefully this has helped, but this is great, Mo. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, no, happy to. I would like to add, if you are in a position today where you are saying, when X, Y, and Z happen, or when my boss does this, or when the company gives me this piece of equipment, then I will perform. I would encourage you to just go ahead and perform. Perform now. It will pay off.
Great wisdom. So, well, thanks for joining us for this segment. That was awesome. All right. Well, this is one of my favorite segments. I enjoy anytime we get an opportunity to spend time talking with leaders in the community and those that are adding value, particularly in our segment. But it's a lot of fun when you get guests on, you get outwardly focused. It's a lot more fun. So today here on the Notes, we get to welcome Vice President of Cloud Practice at Telarus, Mr. Koby Phillips. So welcome.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I think lay of the land, I know in the channel world, it seems like everybody knows you, right? It's the occupational hazard and the role that you are. But for those that don't, or maybe coming through this medium, why don't you give an introduction, just you and your role and what you do within the world of Telarus?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot that we do here at Telarus and a lot I do within the space. So the title is pretty funny in my opinion. VP of Cloud is, it was the best we could do, right? It's like, hey, we got this thing. I extended it. I've changed it from Cloud and Digital Edge to where that didn't really take off to like Cloud and Managed Services. But VP of Cloud, what I do is a simple alignment, between our vendor partners like Otava and then our technology advisor community, and help with the education, the explanation. And then lately, in the last 2 or 3 years, it's really become a great place to set to get a lot of good insights from points of view with our vendor partners, from our advisors. But then that missing big element, I get to interact with a lot of end user clients. So I've gotten to sit down with a number of IT leaders, VP, CIOs, et cetera, and really get, hey, what are they struggling with? What are some of their go-to-market strategies, and start to really get that across different segments, different verticals, and then be able to take that back for the education stuff. But then again, alignment with the things that you're seeing, your team sees, what the other advisors see. It becomes a melting pot of really good information that can turn into some really critical insight as long as we can consolidate it and put it out there. So more and more, that's what I've been focused on, is being able to give real insight, not just conceptual, like this works on paper, but this is what's really happening inside of these organizations. Here's what they're struggling with. And yes, the go-to-market strategy seems really good on paper, but there's this human element, or these political landscapes, or all of these other challenges that aren't being considered, and then wrapping them into that, and giving real world examples and training back to our advisors. So that's been what it's turned into. And I think that that's been the most critical and most valuable asset that we've been able to bring in.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how long have you been with Telarus?
Combined time, 9 years. I took about a year off, we call it my sabbatical. But I went to work for a supplier partner for about a year, and I came back. Originally, I started off on our field sales team running the Pacific Northwest. Moved into another role that was more of a sales leadership role, exited the company, came back, and put a lot of emphasis on this cloud space. So set up our cloud practice. We've had some growth, but it's really attributed to a couple of different factors. Our advisors wanting to consume and learn and push themselves to sell into these spaces. Our channel, kind of the modern distribution channel, was heavily based on a telco channel, so circuit and voice and things like that. But over the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even really in the last 3, we've seen a lot of growth in cybersecurity, cloud, some of these more advanced technologies, getting into application management, ERP, et cetera, and things like that, where we've always been adjacent to it, but we hadn't really been involved in it. And now that ecosystem's really expanded and evolved, and the sophistication of the conversations have as well. So along with that, you have to have a practice, and that's what we came back to. We started the practice at a really good time, January 2020. As you guys know, like starting anything back then was not great. And traditionally, Telarus wasn't known for supporting these type of opportunities for advisors. But our engineering staff and the resources we've added to it has been tremendous. We have, in my opinion, the lead leaders in our engineers as far as like certifications and real life tactical deployments in the cloud, and understanding all the things that I previously rolled out and the insights that we get. A lot of that comes from that engineering team that we've grown to support the growing model. Our channel, TJ, as you're well aware, is a consumer-driven channel. The major products that are still sold are going to be in that network, that circuits, and followed by UCaaS and everything like that. But if you look at the arc of like the UCaaS market, 2017, 2018, 2019, and then it had an explosive growth because of COVID. But it was, as customers said, this is the way that we want to consume the technology. This is a technology that makes the most sense for our business. What do you know? Our channel and our advisors sold more of that. We're not a bleeding edge channel, because when you're relationship based and you have to have repeatable business practices that are built around sales experience, when you're on the bleeding edge, you bleed. But when it's consumer driven, as you're well aware, a lot of these products, this is just how business is done a lot of places now. A lot of companies shed their tech debt. They're allowed to go move into the cloud. They're allowed to do this. We've seen an arc of that as well. So that's a lot of background and kind of where we're at, but it
No,
also
no, super helpful and good transition right into like, who is Telarus, and the differentiations. I think we're kind of naturally getting there, which is, for the audience, a lot of how we've structured this podcast and what we talk about is a blend of what we think is most important, just giving back people, leadership, service, community, how we do that. And then connecting, technology education in a lot of different flavors, not just speeds and feeds, but partnerships, and how to identify who are the right folks to work with and why. And so, for Otava, we work with Telarus as a strategic alliance because there's so much value that is offered, not just in the aggregate, being able to access a lot of technologies and a fly that's coming after me here, but a lot of technologies that are available to us, but and to our partners, but also the thought leadership. Like when you take that much thought leadership and pull that together across the different segments that you serve, you come up with a more robust offering to achieve the business outcomes that customers think or that customers seek. And I think that's a big miss that happens a lot. And I know we talked about this in our meeting, a handful of weeks ago, where as a technology advisor, whether if you're like within Otava, a direct sale would look like a solutions architect or a field CTO with one of our sales rep working with that enterprise customer. But to the world, right, if you're a broker, technology advisor that's out there and you have the customer relationship that you're trying to identify, who's the right Otava, because maybe it's not Otava for the particular product set that the customer is seeking. Telarus is your first telephone call, and that ability to call Telarus and work with their collective engineering team and the robustness of their experience over the years and years of doing this allows for a more well-rounded full stack conversation in technology, as opposed to a widget where you're like, well, I want to buy cloud. Well, what are you using it for? Like, what are you trying to solve, right? And I think that's what I like so much. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because Telarus has been around a long time. You guys have evolved, and I'm sure it would help people to understand, like, well, who is Telarus? What makes you different? And why is this interesting? Because that's why we're here. I think you guys have something really interesting to share.
Yeah. So by definition, we're a technology solutions distributor, right? Within, I said it earlier, the modern distribution channel. These are all
right.
These are all words that probably mean nothing to a lot of people. But what it boils down to is we sit in the middle of an ecosystem of about 450 plus vendors and suppliers that span a ton of different areas of technology. Again, from your major players and connectivity, like your biggest, Verizon's, AT&T's, Comcast, et cetera, through cybersecurity providers that might have a single product, but it's really imperative that customers utilize it, to, leaders in the cloud space, like yourselves in infrastructure, data center, IoT, big into customer experience, meaning like UC collaboration tools like RingCentral, Zoom, into contact center, Five9, NICE. So like this pretty big, robust area. Yep. And there's thousands of advisors that look very different from one to the next. It might be a solo entrepreneur that has built their own company, and they utilize a lot of the partnerships and resources. It might be a large distie/VAR that utilizes this because this is the way some of their clients choose to buy versus their traditional distribution manner, or an MSP that's looking to add value in products but not have the overhead that they have to go build it out themselves. So that's kind of the landscape, right? And there's going to be other segments underneath each one of those that could spurn 20 more definitions. But we sit in the middle of that. We were 20 plus years old. It's a model that you account for a lot of different data points, and you see a lot of different things. And again, look at all the different technology aspects. Now, how do we take that? And we're a partner support organization at our core, meaning we help them craft their quotes and make sure that all of their stuff follows through to help them service their clients and what they're trying to do. Engineering resources and account management, project management, et cetera, all of those type of services that, again, enhance if they choose to utilize them. Now, how to differentiate from our competitors? It's really, that's been the fun part. This has been a space that's, like I said, 20 plus years old. Our competitors are well respected and we respect them. I think where we differentiate is understanding our place in the market and what value that each individual advisor is looking for, and how do we customize that experience and go to market with them and be as involved or not as involved in those type of transactions as we need to be. Now that's not unique, but there's some formulas and some things that we do that I think that are once we get into those. And I think that's really where we start to separate ourselves out. It's not to avoid the question, but to get into it and all of that kind of stuff. It's a whole nother hour plus, and I don't think we want to go that deep into it. But I would say resources, understanding the market and the insights, and then being able, ultimately, what we're trying to do is enhance our advisors to get their customers from point A to point B faster. Think about, like, if you look at as an organization and you're sitting there and everybody's seen those buyer journeys and all the different things. What we try to do is, it's not a straight line. It's going to be a little bit here, but it's going to be a lot faster than all of this stuff. It's to come in and be able to streamline and say, hey, we know this is a fit for X supplier. Let's get them to the table and not waste 2 hours of your time interviewing the wrong vendor for the wrong solution. And when you think about all the information and awareness out there, that's what really happens. I mean, most of the engagements in the cloud space still come from the point of clients come and say, I want to go to Azure or I want to go to AWS. And then the first question that we always ask is why? And are you aware of the other options? Are you aware of a private cloud or a hybrid solution or anything like that? And then what the data shows is, once there's an education session with a client, more than half of those opportunities that start off going to a public cloud end up in a hybrid solution or a private solution, because once they see the value, the benefits, and things like that. And we're not pushing them either way. It's really just, again, an awareness. So I think a lot of that answers the question that you asked of, like, what differentiates us. It's setting through and understanding our place in the ecosystem, combining the intelligence on all sides, and then giving that back to the community to help the end users go faster than they could go by themselves.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's great. And I think, important call outs for those listening, right? So you have 2 decades of excellence in the space. You've seen a lot of maturity, right? The evolution of technology, largely from speeds and feeds and connectivity, up stack into on-prem, which then converted into hosting data center services, which then converted into cloud. And then now you have multi-cloud. And it's really interesting that you kind of called out public cloud, because I see that too. So I get a lot of customers that they're kind of one of two camps. They either make basically they jump all in with cloud. They select public cloud, because it's easy in terms of, self-orchestrated, pop a credit card and all of a sudden spin up an environment. And then they get their bill and they're like, whoa, okay, hold on a second. This is a little bit different than what I expected in a usage-based model. And then they start to learn the ands, right? Like, oh, and I'm responsible for compliance, and I'm responsible for, securing this and making sure it's protected and preserved. And so to your point, the quality of the conversation on the front end and having a partner like Telarus that can support the technology advisor to have a more well-educated conversation that, informs, hey, what's going on with the industry? What are you trying to achieve as a business? Marrying the two together is going to get great results. And I think something else that people miss out on that I think Telarus can offer a significant benefit to is just the law of repetition, right? So like what one sales company might see in selling one version of their product, to your point, you have 400 plus different technology vendors and thousands of technology advisors. You might see that deal type or that sale 10 times in a week, right? And quote that out and have that conversation, whereas they might have it 10 times in a year, right? So you create that expertise and experience. And so I think that's another thing that's a really important call out, because Telarus has built an incredibly well-respected name in the industry over the last 2 decades. So,
appreciate that. And, it services both sides of that. Obviously, there's a tremendous value to the advisor, but also when we bring an opportunity that's been vetted to you guys, you're able to then understand that this should be something that's in our wheelhouse, right? Because it's already been vetted. The engagement is a little bit different. And what I like is the maturity of the relationship, where even we'll go back to like that 5-year mark. We might have those similar conversations, but the ecosystem hadn't recognized the expertise that had been built in, and so they would still go and run the same cycle. So what we would see is on the end user meeting, the client meeting, we would already had an hour plus long kind of deep dive, and then that same deep dive would get done, attempted 3 more times. What I've liked is, as the awareness, into your point of like everyone understanding, the importance of it, there might be validation that information is still updated depending on the time frame, but like it saves so much time for the customer, and again, it takes that customer journey makes it go a lot faster. And the suppliers that really lean into that, it gets recognized, and it makes a better overall sales experience. And I think we talked about this too. Like our whole channel is built around some pretty interesting information. The challenger customer, which is built off of customer experience, and I quote this all the time. I'm not on their payroll, but I should be, because I think I've referenced that. There's like 4 major components that they went out and surveyed: company and brand, product and service, price, and sales experience, of what drives customer loyalty more than anything else. 2019 to 2021, it was 53% sales experience. I pulled the 2024 numbers. I couldn't find the gap years that I'm not mentioning. It's 51%. So it's went down a little bit. Price went up a little bit, probably inflation. But I'm not an economics major or anything. But that's where the 2 points came from. The other 2 were 18 and 20. They both leveled off at 19. But still, by a wide margin, sales experience is what drives customer loyalty. And if you look at what our whole channel sets up with, in that place in the ecosystem, is to help our advisors create a better overall sales experience that drives more loyalty, and therefore, better business for them, and a way better experience than what the customer is likely to get out if they go on their own. Because they have multitudes of different ways to buy. They can buy direct, they can buy with an advisor, they can buy from a distie, a bar, an MSP, especially in our space. And our goal is to try to make the sales experience for anyone that we work with better than they're going to get on any of those other options.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And, we've seen the value, in the near term, obviously, on the receiving end of, TAs reaching out to us or getting connected through Telarus, we understand, not only the value proposition, but the way in which you want that quality delivered. And so I think we're able to, align to that. We have a passion for customer centricity, not just experience, but really building your entire organization, around what does that mean. And so it's fun. It's good stuff. I think the challenge that I'm seeing now, so kind of switching gears a little bit and give some substance to folks at the core, right? As opposed to just on the edges now, like who is Telarus? What do you do? How do we integrate? How do they benefit? We've covered that. Is something that I think is really powerful, and that is real-time industry education, right? Like market competitive analysis. And you guys do a lot of that. You spend a lot of time really evaluating, and you're in a lot of interesting conversations, again, because of volume at the aggregate level. So when we look at your vertical, I know that the name doesn't really represent it all, but we'll just say cloud, right? Yeah. For now. I think it's interesting, right? We talked recently about like the activities in Broadcom that's kind of off to the side, but it universally affects the industry. But in general, cloud right now, and speaking to those TAs that are looking for like, why should I sell this more? Maybe we spend a few minutes there and talk about that, of like, why should you be selling this? What could this do for your business, and what are customers looking for? And I think between the two of us, we could offer some pretty good thought leadership around like, you might want to really reevaluate, like, are you thinking about this enough? And are you having this conversation enough with customers?
And I apologize, I can't remember. I know we talked, it was only a couple of weeks ago, but
yeah, no worries.
I don't know if I developed this analogy between now and then, or if I used it then as well. So I'm going to go through it. But I consider IT as consistently remodeling a house or renovating a house. And this Broadcom thing with the VMware disruption, and we always use, I'm a disruptor in tech, or this is disruption for all the wrong reasons, right? So imagine you're renovating your house. The kitchen's done. It's been done. You're happy with the kitchen. You love the kitchen. It's good. And you're working on an addition to a bedroom or something else, and a pipe burst in your kitchen. And now you got to go back and fix it. That's really what I equate this to or kind of use an analogy for, because it stopped a lot of organizations in their tracks on the progress they were making on other projects. They had to press pause. They had to wait for all the information to filter out. They had to figure out how different pieces affected them. And now they have to figure out what they want to do with now going forward. So the pipe burst. And what I've seen now is organization goes, well, if I'm already in the kitchen having to fix the kitchen, maybe I didn't love the backsplash. Maybe the cabinet color wasn't exactly what I wanted. And maybe I need some new appliances. So, relating that back to the tech side, maybe I need to reevaluate storage and data and just my overall infrastructure go to market. And where am I putting this? Like, it's been traditionally, I've just housed it on my own stuff and my own gear. Maybe it's in a data center. Maybe it's still in my own data center or a third party. Maybe I should move it. Maybe I should. So it's created a ton of opportunity for our advisors, especially those that were still not fully engaged in this space. It's created an easy conversation to have, and then to get the right resources involved.
For sure.
Because there's been so much noise and a bit of confusion early on, which is all, in my opinion, it's settled out quite a bit compared to where it was, because it was changing. It was almost like watching a stock ticker. It's like, what's changing next, or where's this going? And then multiple messages got convoluted, because it wasn't just the VMware stuff. It's like, VMware also sold off their Horizons platform. Oh, they also changed their partner program tremendously. Oh, they also did this. It was a lot to shift through. But for the end users, it's really come down to a couple of things. Optimize to the new type of model that VMware, going from, one like RAM based or meter, usage based type to you're paying for the whole thing. So you need to dense up your environment per the VMs you're utilizing. Not to steal from an old data center term, right? You got to dense up that cabinet so you don't pay for multiple ones and just get power to or migrate off. And then what are the options either way? But organizations are looking for help whichever way they go. And they're looking for awareness and education on their options. And that's created a tremendous amount of really great conversations for advisors. And the force multiplier that I was a little surprised by is that emotional reaction to just open up everything else. You know what? Let's just take a look. This is stuff we were going to do 2 or 3 years from now. Let's just go and do it now, since we're having to do this other thing. I don't know are you seeing anything different than that, or is that similar kind of what you're seeing?
Nope. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think, the challenge for businesses today is, well, there's kind of a few things, right? So some of the decisions that organizations made, particularly as it relates to capital in this area of their strategy, they made at a time in a pull forward, almost an emotional reaction basis because of COVID. So you saw a lot of people pull forward purchasing decisions and try to accelerate things that existed in 18 and 19 leading into 20. They saw what was coming, and so you saw a land grab, right, on supply chain, and everything halted, right? So then coming out of COVID, the acceleration of other things starting to really come out. You have the launch of ChatGPT to the broader community in the world, fastest subscription base, right? The earlier in the year, early adoption was non-existent. It was just full adoption. Like we're going to put it into play and just, no risk it, no biscuit. Here you go. We're going to YOLO this thing, and put it in. And so I think when you marry those major factors, and then you see what's happening in the markets, and you see rising costs of capital, and it's forcing businesses to say, to your point, technology, we like to use the word disruption. What Broadcom introduced was distraction. That's what they introduced. And now businesses are like, okay, I'm distracted, but since I'm going to go ahead and now do this. And like to your point, I love the remodel. Okay, I'm going to reevaluate. So architecturally, do I want to be CapEx or OpEx intensive? Do I want to leverage public cloud and borrow their capital, or do I want to do it myself? If I'm going to do it myself, is this going to be more GPU based? And I'm going to look at, I know I have to go AI ML. So am I going to renew and refresh my hardware a little bit earlier and prepare workloads for machine learning and larger language models? And what am I really thinking about? I think it's interesting. It's a point of inflection that a lot of customers are doing. In the past, it was really more vendor selection. Folks are like, we kind of know what we want to do, and we're just choosing between Azure, GCP, VMware. Now it's a little bit different. The business is out in front. And I think this is where TAs can take advantage. The business decision makers, CFOs, CEOs, chief customer officers, they're out there saying, hey, we need to reimagine our business. Especially in this macroeconomic climate, we want to take some risks. So we need technology to come alongside us and make different recommendations than just raw infrastructure. And so it's opening up much more sophisticated conversations. And I think that aligns really, really well with companies like Telarus and certainly Otava's approach in the cloud, in DR area, backup as a service, security as a service areas. But for Telarus in general, I think it's a sweet spot for you. You're like, hey, we're built for this, to have these kinds of conversations. So if the TA can get us in the room, we can help reinforce our value proposition and help them achieve the business outcomes they seek. Right. So
yeah, you hit on two of the biggest, what I call like fishing lure conversations that are happening right now. And connecting them is exactly what I'm saying too. Like the IT leaders that have their eye on, and it's hard for these guys. A lot of IT leaders come in. They assume a ton of tech debt. They're just trying to get out in front. They don't get to be forward looking that often. So a lot of these guys are taking the opportunity to go, all right, I know I want to modernize. To your point, I want to prepare for what I want to use down the road that I know my executives are going to ask for or are already asking for, that there's a ton of competitive pressure on. But this is almost allowed an excuse to go and to tag on to a lot of that. And for the guys that are thinking like that, we're seeing a lot of AI preparedness conversations. How do I need to reevaluate my data sets? How do I securely tie into these? And what that's also done is, if they are managing their own infrastructure, they don't want to anymore because they're like, hey, this isn't the fun, sexy stuff anymore. Like infrastructure cloud, that's kind of the way a lot of people do this. Let's have you guys do that, table stakes it. Let me restaff my team to go do these more advanced stuff. Or if they don't, let's bring in some other people that can, and let's have a collaborative environment. And that's where we've seen explosive growth and opportunities. And it's not even, to your point, it's almost like your chat GPT, statement. It's not like early adopters in this space. This is just like people that know they wanted to do it. It's almost like the buyer that, hey, I'm aware of all this. I just don't have time to get to it, right? Now I have the excuse to go and attack it and go and get to it. So it's a lot of fun, but like anything else, it can be overwhelming. So creating, again, going back to the sales experience and what the advisors and the Telarus side of it, it's giving them a methodology of approach to create a step one and a calm approach to this and scaling it out, working from, it seems to make sense, working from end result backwards. But if you look at the traditional IT buying, it's identify a problem, identify a solution, and then the outcome. It's like, let's get to the outcome and then put the solution in afterwards. So like that's been the flip, and AI's triggered that a lot as much as anything else.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love it. I think, to close out, I think that's where a lot of businesses have to challenge themselves. To your point, infrastructure or hosting in general is really becoming more of a public, utility in how people view its consumption. And for those organizations that are trying to solve top line problems with bottom line activities, you're never going to get there. It's going to force you now, if you really want to take advantage of what I think is it's an industry reset. A lot of your competitors, maybe you were a laggard and now you're on par because of all the distraction that has come, but you have a short window of time. And I think in this next 12 months, it's going to be critical for organizations to really evaluate from a business perspective, top line focused. Who do we want to be in this next evolution? What are we trying to achieve? And then take that through, be it your TA, up to your TSD and Telarus, to say, hey, like, this is what we want, and know that that's the beauty of that relationship and the way that cadence works is you can get the right people in the room to have a quality conversation that can cover the full gamut, of all the considerations that go into those kinds of decisions. So I think it's really cool. It's fun to see, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it in the next 6 to 8 months, especially in budget seasons that are upcoming.
Well, and what I love about it is when we get opportunities over to organizations like yours, right? And it's before we're even out of the initial scope of work with a client, it's, oh, you guys also do this and you do that and you do that. yes, please sign us up, because resource starved, skill sets are limited,
Yeah.
and especially where they want to go. And I believe a majority of the IT leaders know that this is an opportunity to reset, and they are kind of putting a ticking, clock on it, depending on their renewal cycles and everything else like that. So the opportunity is now. It's going to be a little bit for the foreseeable future, but as we know, things don't always move as quickly as we want when it comes to implementations and getting through the customer's landscape. So I love the fact that when you get to an organization and hand it off and you can expand out your services. And again, that's such a value add for the advisors, as well as they can just continue to add more value to what they bring to their clients.
I love it. Well, for those listening still, Koby, where do they go to find more about Telarus, whether it's just your website or podcast or things that you would encourage them to plug in to learn more? What do you have for them?
Our website's definitely going to be our best entry point. Our SVP of engineering, Josh Lopresto, hosts a great podcast called Next Level Biz Tech that is valuable for our advisor community, end user community, and our vendors, and to listen in. He covers a variety of technical topics and just more the business side of it as well. So it's a lot of different type of guests, similar to what you host here, TJ. And I would say those are going to be the two that I'll push out the most: our website and Josh's podcast.
Awesome. I just made a note of Josh's podcast so that we can get out on the wire for y'all as well. So, well, thanks so much for joining. I had a lot of fun. I'm very thankful for the relationship, and I'm loving that we're getting to build this together and serve customers. So it's a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you again for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, well, that is it. So great episode, awesome topics, and really cool ones to come. So next episode, we will spend our time talking about mentoring from a perspective of the benefits, how to mentor, and really how to grow into that role. And it's one of our favorite topics. It's really that next step of coaching, this transition from coaching to mentoring. So really excited about that. And like we always ask, like, subscribe, share, and comment. We're looking to continue to develop this and give back and make an impact. And so we really appreciate those that have stayed with us here now in almost a complete second season, which is bananas. And so as we always say,
do a decision.
So thanks for joining. We'll see you at mentoring. Have a great one.